There is already skepticism being expressed about the effects of the conference in Bali, where 190 nations are working on a new pact to stop global warming. On Monday, the U.S. insisted that a roadmap for future talks should not even suggest potential targets for emission cuts by rich nations, much less demand specific goals. The talks are meant to create a series of goals which will replace the Kyoto Protocol when it expires in 2012. Among the aims, a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2020. The roadmap also says emissions need to peak within the next 10 to 15 years to avoid the worst effects of global warming. But some delegates are expecting figures like that to be wiped out of the final document. Since taking power, U.S. President George Bush has refused to sign the Kyoto Accords, his administration maintaining emissions targets it sets are too expensive. But in the president's home state of Texas, local authorities are taking a different approach, as Al Jazeera's Mike Kirsch reports.
The deadliest levels of carbon dioxide pollution in the United States are pouring out of Texas, the home state of U.S. President George W. Bush.
We're killing people, and we're causing people to die prematurely.
About the public health aspect.
Veteran physician Robert Cluck also happens to be the Republican mayor of Arlington, Texas. He says the state's greenhouse gas emissions are shameful.
It's inexcusable, it's embarrassing, and it's something we cannot continue to live with.
His call for cutting emissions has not played well with big oil Republicans here.
I received quite a bit of criticism from some of my Republican colleagues in Congress about talking about global warming. Didn't believe it was happening.
The heaviest pollution in Texas is here in the southern part of the state, along the Gulf of Mexico. The oil industry here and its refineries have for decades cast toxic clouds over the citizens of Gulf towns like Port Arthur, Texas.
It's real bad. It's probably worse in the world, but all we can do is just live here or uproot and go somewhere else.
As thick as Texas smog is the irony that its capital, Austin, has launched what many consider the most ambitious effort of any city in America to cut greenhouse gas emissions. An effort that begins right here at City Hall, with a rustic structure built from crude stone blocks and recycled metals, powered in part by solar cells on rooftops. And it continues with Austin residents receiving rebates on their electric bills for putting solar panels on their rooftops and installing energy-efficient clothes washers and other appliances in their homes. All this in the shadow of the former Texas governor's skepticism about the severity of global warming and his refusal as the U.S. president to join most of the rest of the world in signing the Kyoto Accords limiting greenhouse gas emissions.
Dollars should come second to public health. Public health should trump everything else that we do.
Arlington Mayor Cluck says President Bush's failure to sign the Kyoto Protocol and take the lead on cutting emissions worldwide doesn't mean American cities can't take the lead in their own backyards. His city has pledged to go green like Austin. Indeed, across the U.S., well over 700 mayors representing 75 million Americans from New York to Los Angeles to Chicago have pledged to meet the standards prescribed in the Kyoto Protocol by 2012.
I'd like to see 300,000 Kyotos signed by mayors and governors at the local level, at the grassroots level.
To reduce the level of emissions not just in Texas, he says, but around the rest of the U.S., the world's greatest contributor to global warming. Mike Kirsch, Al Jazeera, Port Arthur, Texas.